All right, let's see why this is controversial. This Velma show. I know nothing about it, but I've heard people are not liking it. And I don't know if I'm ever gonna get around to watching it, so let's just watch someone's opinion. All right.
Okay, I want to talk about Velma. Yes, that's right, I said Velma, which is a dismal criticism magnet produced by Mindy Kaling and funded by HBO that bastardizes every single thing you once loved about Scooby-Doo.
Really?
A twisted adult cartoon. There's only 2 episodes so far, and the internet is already full of hot takes about how terrible the show is, but today I want to discuss why I'm, I guess, fairly confident that the entire purpose of this television program is to make people who see it angry and ride the wave of bad publicity to staggering.
What? Coda doesn't like the show either. Oh my god.
No beating around the bush here, let's just dive in. Velma is a brand new HBO animated series based on the Scooby-Doo IP. Setting aside anyone's individual thoughts on that, whether or not they enjoyed it as a kid or ever even watched it in the first place.
Coda really doesn't like it. He's really upset that I'm watching this. He's like, stop it! Scooby-Doo!
Scooby-Doo is a nostalgia-filled children's program from as far back as the 1970s. I myself watched it whenever I could, within reason, I guess, during my younger years, but what we see now from HBO and executive producer Mindy Kaling is a demented patchwork of bad jokes, insults, and poorly disguised vindictive themes meant to make every single person who watches the show angry and ride the already enormous wave of hate to colossal overall viewership. In my opinion, and keep in mind a lot of this is, of course, my opinion, this show is one of the first ever clear-cut examples where there actually isn't even a well-defined target audience, because that target audience is everyone, and the methods used to capture their interest have absolutely nothing to do with legitimate narrative appeal. For starters, though this particular angle has been covered extensively by other commentators, Velma appears to be a self-insert, as it's called. Mindy Kaling, an Indian-American comedian, actress, screenwriter, and producer, is the executive producer and writer of the show itself, which coincidentally has decided to racially swap Velma, the main character, from white to Indian, with Kaling herself doing all of the voice acting.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, she's an actress, and if a lot of times actors, when they produce or write stuff, they insert themselves into the lead, so that doesn't surprise me, but I'm interested to see what he means by self-insert.
That's fine. I don't really care for the political discourse that rapidly devolves as soon as you mention racial character swapping.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about racial character swapping. Like, do whatever you want. I think people get so upset about that kind of stuff, and it's silly to me.
But for this particular case, yeah, it is kind of relevant. The thing to understand here is that Velma has atrocious favorability ratings, though it is admittedly far from a perfect barometer in this case.
7% audience, 55% tomato.
Rotten Tomatoes is currently sitting at just 7% audience favorability, making it basically one of the worst rated shows in existence. However, approval has absolutely nothing to do with numerical success. It seems that while critics are still trying to pretend it's a good program, at least some of them, the barriers are coming down, and reality has begun to set in, at least on a very basic level, that this is a terrible piece of writing that should not exist and deserves absolutely
exist.
Right off the bat, we have an Indian-American screenwriter, producer, and voice actor who turned Velma into an Indian-American character, which she was not before this, and now does the voice acting herself. Heck of a start. What's next? Racially swapping Shaggy, probably the most beloved character alongside Scooby-Doo himself, who isn't even in the show, who is now black. Shaggy is.
Scooby-Doo's not in the show! Did I miss that? Scooby-Doo's not in the show! That's fucked up. I don't know if I really care that much about racial swapping, personally, but Scooby's not in the show.
And also a notable anti-marijuana presence in the program.
What? You can't do that. That's what Shaggy's known for. Although, to be fair, if they racially swapped Shaggy and then still had the marijuana presence, that would imply other things. So maybe that's why they removed it, but just then keep Shaggy white and make Fred black. I don't give a who cares? Why are we taking out the weed part? That's important. Scooby Snacks!
Are the days of a close-knit detective group where the lovable stoner and his best friend dog contribute to wild hijinks and investigations. Instead, we get a totally warped show where the gang is in high school and pretty much everything about them is different and terrible.
I mean, if they're in high school, that's fine. You can do a different take on that, but why?
Parents were likely aware of the insinuation that Shaggy was a part of, shall we say, stoner culture.
Yes, he is.
420 culture.
Yeah.
Which let the kids, unaware of the hidden subtext here, watch and enjoy while the parents maybe got a laugh too, or picked up on hidden messages that didn't really apply to the kids.
Yeah.
As the snacking and general comedic nature of that dynamic was allowed to play out on screen. No beating around the bush here, that's gone. It's not gone because it needed to be gone. It's gone because the writer, who also racially swapped the main character to her own race and then voice acted her, decided to make him black for quite literally no apparent reason. I'd like to say again that by itself, that doesn't matter. Racial characteristics of on-screen characters really shouldn't matter in an ideal world. But Velma isn't just doing this to find the right actors for the role. It isn't doing this to make an actual point or appeal to a separate demographic even. It's doing this to make people angry, which is working. There's only a couple
I think it depends on the reason. Like, I don't think changing the race of a character does not matter. I think people get so triggered about that stuff, and it's really, like, not a big deal. But, yeah, you should be trying to keep the character authentic and cast the right actor for the role. So that's interesting. Also, no Scooby-Doo. I can't get over that.
Episodes out right now, but let me just frame this out for everyone. Velma is an insufferable know-it-all that despises the world, has crippling hallucinations that apparently cause heart attacks somehow, and judges everyone at precisely every single juncture. Fred, a mainstay of the Scooby-Doo universe, yeah, he is, not kidding here, even though I wish I was, a tiny loser who hasn't gone through puberty. His dad is ashamed of him. He can't function beyond the cognitive level of a toddler, and therefore becomes a burden on everyone around him nearly 100% of the time.
Why?
This isn't a creative choice for the betterment of the actual narrative. This is a creative choice to insult white people. Yes, I know some people will immediately start throwing out buzzwords like white fragility, but the show is plastered with examples where white people are painted as, or flat out even called, serial killers, druggies, and insensitive trolls that merely subtract from Velma's brainpower in obnoxious ways. Think about this. Fred, who is now the only white male character of any importance whatsoever, can't even cut his own food. Velma humiliates him constantly on the basis of race and class. But it doesn't stop there, because Velma is also a lesbian. Again, nothing wrong with that until you realize that she's 15. And the show is now very...
Jesus Christ! Why? We don't... Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that if she's of age. What are we doing? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh God, I'm uncomfortable.
Very openly pushing sexual themes. Velma and Daphne have chemistry of sorts. Not really, but in a way where they are obviously in a specific trajectory leading to sex. And broader areas of the show also seem to be designed as a sort of narrative funnel into the idea of 15-year-olds being hyper-sexually active. One demographic will be angry about Fred. Whether or not they should is up to you as the viewer, but they're gonna be. Another will be angry about Velma and her hypersexual themes. Yet another will be angry about the racial swapping. But it doesn't stop there. Daphne's parents are a racially diverse lesbian couple who adopted her, by the way, and are also cops by profession. Yet another...
It just doesn't end. It just keeps going. Why? What is going on? What is this?
Who draw their guns, these lesbian cop parents, who draw their guns on an unarmed teen immediately in the first episode, as well as shoot an unarmed teenager, cartoon teenager, that teenager being Fred, 2 times in his own house without a warrant as he tries to pull out a pen. Not done yet, because they also go undercover in the town's high school looking for drugs, as they paint marijuana as some sort of dangerous phenomenon, thereby pissing off yet another demographic, where these cops then start whipping out and firing tasers. I should also mention at this point that Daphne herself is apparently Asian, making 3 out of the 4 main characters in the entire show racially swapped. I can't help but consider something here, and maybe I'm way off base, but a growing section of Hollywood, as well as the entertainment industry at large, seems to now believe that the worse you make a show's writing, as long as you are aware, quote unquote, of it being bad, the better the show actually is, because of subverted expectations. However, Velma has gone
Well, it's because it's like just trying to get attention and ratings. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily subverted expectation. I mean, maybe, but I think it's just like if they're just trying to get attention, maybe. Like all press is, no press is bad press kind of thing. I don't. So much of this just seems so unnecessary. Like race swap some of the characters, sure, I don't care, but like when I don't know, why do you need to make Fred like an idiot? That's just mean. You don't need to do that. Why do you have to like make everything so hyper political? It doesn't need to be like that.
So far beyond that flimsy initial premise, it is now just flat out offensive to pretty much everyone who watches it. Velma herself, as a character, is a disgustingly misanthropic person. She is self-centered, she is horribly unsanitary, example being when she just eats out of the garbage for no reason at all, and the immediate atmosphere the show does manage to cultivate is intentional destruction of every established premise that Scooby-Doo fans initially loved. For those keeping track, let's go over the list so far. The show targets and alienates white people a lot, specifically men, but also a wider group.
I mean, I don't even think it just does that. If it, like the traits he's assigning to Velma, it sounds like it's also alienating Indian people. Like that just seems messed up to everyone. I feel like it's just trying to genuinely piss everybody off, and to lesbian cops.
Well, through relentless and repeated racial insults. It certainly can't be for children or even slightly traditional viewers because it also pushes, within seconds, I might add, an uncomfortable amount of cartoon high school nudity, with a very clear push towards sexual awakening being a theme in the show.
Yeah, that's f***ing weird. Okay.
Main character, racially swapped by an executive producer of the same race, who then voice acts the character in question as well.
Again, I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't bother me at all. But if the character is like really messed up, then I'm like, and it has nothing to do with like the original IP of the show and the nostalgia factor, and then I'm like, what's happening?
Wildly unhygienic, deeply prejudiced, and oddly sexualized, while the parents of her potential love interest are themselves interracial lesbian cops who violate the Constitution routinely and due process as well to just mercilessly shoot or attack unarmed cartoon teenagers at school or in their own homes. When we really think about it, none of these characters are even remotely close to the originals, because even unspoken ambiguous character templates, like Shaggy being a part of stoner culture, and
there's no Scooby-Doo!
I mean, what even is this shot right here? Are we supposed to be happy about this? Laughing? Is this brave?
Yeah, I mean, it's like if they were all grown up and this was marketed only for adults and they weren't in high school, I wouldn't have a problem with the romantic sexual stuff. I wouldn't care that she's a lesbian. It doesn't matter. But we shouldn't be talking about it and like making like there shouldn't be all these sexual scenes when they're in high school and we don't know who the audience is. It's like, okay, now it's creepy. You know? It's okay to talk about like coming out in high school. Like there are plenty of shows that touch on that, but there's not like all this grotesque stuff that's for adults going on. This is just creepy.
Is this obscene? Is it a hilarious meta-commentary on society? Or is it just bad, low-quality production that harnesses the infinite power of hate watching to drive up viewership? Now, some of you might be saying to yourselves, no shit. Obviously the show antagonizes previous fans and men and white people and stoner culture, etc., because it's supposed to. It's a woke show, and that's just what woke things do. But before we go down that route, I want to specify that this bottom-scraping piece of shit also decides to insult the Me Too movement at large. In what
They just can't stop. That's why I'm confused. It seems like we're insulting everyone. Like, it seems like we're insulting everyone.
Feels kinda like unironic commentary. One joke is about how the misanthropic, horribly disgusting, garbage-eating main character speaks the truth like comedians did or used to before the Me Too movement. Which, when you think about this in context, is not really going to infuriate the same demographic as half the other badly written one-liners, and instead, similar to the law enforcement themes, is more likely to infuriate the overly emotional and hypersensitive woke audience that many people are assuming it's meant to cater to. Seriously, it doesn't get much clearer than this right here. Emblematic words from the original show, Zoinks, Jeepers, Mystery Machine, etc., are names of drugs in the new Velma series that Shaggy hates. But for all of its insults to existing fans, its deliberate destruction of established lore, and its effort to piss off practically every single demographic that views it, the show probably isn't going to flop. Think about it. And
what? They don't even say those words. Like it's just such a disrespect to the fans. That's so sad. This is crazy. I don't know who this is for.
I myself fall into this category, by the way, so just keep that in mind. The number of creators, outlets, and news publications that are covering this dumpster fire is enormous. Tens of millions
Guilty
of views about
right now.
harmful stereotypes, hundreds of millions of views on TikTok where offensive jokes are propagated to the very same community that they are designed to anger, which results in what precisely?
Clicks, likes or dislikes, views, attention, media attention for the show. Honestly, this is kind of reminding me of, this video is legit making me angry. Let's all take a breath together. Okay, guess what? It's just a show. And guess what? If we all feel this way, then at least we're all agreeing on something. You know, let's breathe. Let's breathe together. It's gonna be okay. This is reminding me of a play in New York City. Back when I was studying my last semester of college, we got to study in New York City because I studied musical theater. When I was there, we saw a lot of theater, and there was one off-Broadway show that was taking place way out at the end of the F train. I forget the name of the theater. It was like a famous theater at the end of the F train, and it was a adaptation of a Greek tragedy. I think it was an adaptation of Troilus and Cressida, if I'm not mistaken, but I can't really remember. This show was atrocious. It was so bad that it is the only show to this day that I left during intermission. They left the house lights up the entire time. They blasted lights at the audience. They did this weird thing where they culturally appropriated Native American garb into the costumes. But then some people that were a part of the show were treating it like it was a thing that they would film. So there'd be people on stage who are part of the play who'd be filming it, and then there'd be TV screens up that the audience could see. Like the play was happening, but there was also a documentary happening at the same time. Like that's what it felt like. The acting was horrible. It was horrible. And then on top of it all, it was very long. The year was 2015. And later, like during its run, it also came out that one of the actors in the play was domestically abusing his wife, who was also in the play. So we didn't know this before we went, but I left during intermission because it was so bad. Later, when I saw them advertising the play in New York, we literally saw flyers advertising the play because critics had called it the worst play in New York, and they ran with it. And that was how they advertised it, was the worst play in New York. Come see the worst play in New York. So this kind of stuff does work because people will go check it out because they're like, they want to see what all the anger and hate is about, you know? I don't know how successful it will be long term because I think stuff like this I don't know if it'll work multiple seasons in a row. I feel like it'll only work for one season. So I don't know. And I don't know if like people will really watch every episode if they're really hating it. But I think it will get people to check it out. So it's interesting. Let's keep watching.
That's right. It results in viewership. People are watching Velma. Quite a lot of them, in fact. Not because they like it, though maybe a very, very small number of people fall into that category. But if they do, they just have objectively awful taste. But because they want to see it firsthand. That's the real reason. How bad is this piece of shit? Result, higher viewership, positive feedback on all signals that indicate the speculative value of a series, despite the almost universally negative impressions of actual audience members, or legitimate viewers, and higher engagement on social media than most other shows in existence, because critics are very, very likely to post about the series, perpetuating a cycle where something terrible is being watched because it's terrible.
Right.
Most television programs, nearly all of them in fact.
Also, just notice here, there's a red Solo cup coming out of the locker here, which is like, it's like a subtle message about like there's like drinking going on in this high school, but yet like we're anti-weed in the show, which is also just like, again, who is this for?
Appeal to someone. And maybe Velma succeeds in that somewhere along the line here with like the most brain-dead audience demographic you can imagine. But the overwhelming majority of people despise it, as many of them watch it anyway, making this a strong contender for the first ever example of something designed by hate, carefully crafted to alienate everyone, and deliberately structured as a sponge of negative commentary, which will probably accomplish the same ultimate payoff as a traditional cartoon. People love talking shit, and they love to pile on against bad media. Velma Velma is the epitome of bad media, with what seems like a never-ending torrent of terrible decision-making, writing, and character choices, but when looking at all of it together in context, it almost becomes impossible to believe that this was not done intentionally. As the saying goes, all press is good press, and while that may not be strictly true in, let's say, a political race, for example, it very much is true here and now with Velma. The horrible, creatively bankrupt decision-making of Mindy Kaling has produced something that is going viral right now. It actually is, and will continue to do so as long as it continues to offend viewers. Each new episode will have new jokes that inflame anger in one group or another, and that anger leads to massive earned media, which catapults the show higher in viewership as people watch it just to see how bad it really is with their own eyes. If the show didn't do this, what would actually happen? Well, if we're being honest here, no one would watch it.
I think it's just sad because it takes something that was like so precious to like so many of us in childhood and so fun, like Scooby-Doo, and just bastardizes it and turns it into something that it's not and it doesn't need to be, and that's why it angers so many people. He's right, like it is gonna get attention. I just don't think that attention's gonna last. So it's also sad because it's like, okay, great, you made one season of a show that pissed everyone off, that was bad. I personally don't think that would lead into a second season that would garner any kind of success. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people would watch the second season to see if it's worse or better. I personally don't think so. I think it's like you're just going to get a one and done. I am choosing to believe that they did this intentionally solely because I don't want to assume anyone is that dumb. Like, if you didn't do this intentionally, then you made this thinking that people would just genuinely like it. I feel like they knew what they were doing. Season 2 might be greenlit. I don't know if people will actually watch it. Of course it's greenlit. It's viral. Of course there's a season 2 that's greenlit. I just mean, I don't know how many people are really realistically going to watch the second season. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm being too optimistic. Like, watching this video isn't going to make me go watch the show because I value my time. And if everyone's ragging on it, then I'm like, I'm just going to take people's word for it and not watch it because I don't want to get angry. It's kind of sad. I don't want to believe that somebody would do this and not understand that it's not good. Like, I just said a lot of negatives there. I would hope that somebody who's written comedy that's funny like her would understand that, like, hey, we're doing this to be inflammatory and get ratings. But it's still sad. It's like, negative stuff gets attention more so than positive stuff, which is, it's just sad. HBO canceled the new Batman animated show for this. That's a bummer. Yeah, and it's just, I just don't want to see more things get made for the sake of going viral and being bad intentionally. Like, I just hate to see an art form going that way.
In my opinion, and I stand by this very strongly, in fact, the risk of taking a beloved property like Scooby-Doo that is fairly old, if you're talking about the heyday, and just ripping it apart with maximized artistic venom is actually safer than trying to make something good. It's much more temporary, perhaps, but for the moment, capitalizing on a virality loop of sorts, where negative feedback is the engine behind it, is an easier thing to predictably accomplish when compared to the uncertainty of actually trying to make something people will love.
But it's lazy.
I really do. But this feels like a pilot program for purely malicious reboots with the only definable intention being maximized anger through the destruction of existing brand goodwill. Today it's Scooby-Doo. Tomorrow, hopefully nothing, but who knows. Again, I do hope I'm wrong, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to catastrophize and be like, oh, there's going to be more stuff like this. Like, but it is sad. Like, it's like you hope that they're smart enough to know what they're doing, but also that's a sad reality if they're just willingly making something bad for the sake of going viral, especially when it's someone like Mindy Kaling who's already really successful. Like, you'd think it doesn't matter. Like, just make something as best as you can make it. I don't know. It just makes me sad either way. Either way, it's sad. So, but that was an interesting video. Thanks for watching that one with me, guys. Peace.